hot topic. One precious metal that's been significantly undervalued for years is potentially set to surge. Nick Grovich, owner of AmFed Coin and Bullion, has long recommended this precious metal. Up to 600,000 ounces of this rare metal will be needed by 2030 to produce green hydrogen. Nick is doubling down on this pick, and you should too. Call Nick at AmFed Coin and Bullion to find out more. I've been friends with Nick for years, and he's my go-to guy when it comes to coins and bullion. I trust him. He is a good and very knowledgeable man. Call Nick at 800-221-7694, 800-221-7694, AmericanFederal.com, AmericanFederal.com. Not one mistake.
Trending now on the Charlie Kirk Show.
When there is a clash on the left between separate preferred activist groups, who gets preference? Who wins? Now, on the left, they have a hierarchy. Not any different than a hierarchy that you would have in any sort of organization. You see, when the left has a moment of disagreement or conflict, it is very important to realize that there is a structure of what matters more than something else. I wrote a piece for humanevents.com where I wrote, it was literally called, "This Matters More Than That." Now, a great example of this is when Fauci, the lockdown artist, the anti-freedom activist, mad scientist, who is the best example of the technological and scientific elite that the left worships. When he was even confronted by a talk show host, where they asked Fauci, they said, "So do you think that young people should stop hooking up via Tinder and basically having
Hello, everybody. I'm Dennis Prager, and welcome to the new year, my first show of the year. I'm extremely curious how your Christmas and New Year went. The world is divided between the scared and the non-scared, and both sides won't change. The unscared are not going to become scared, and the scared, nothing, literally nothing, can get them unscared. If you have the temperament to walk around afraid, and I have dear relatives who are like that, and I know them well, there's nothing you can say, nothing you can prove. When the moron who is the Secretary of Defense shows up in the Philippines with a visor on, do you know what message it sends of the weakness of American leadership, of the wimps that we have governing our armed forces? If there's anybody I don't want wearing a mask outside, it's the Secretary of Defense. If the President of the United States wants to show that he's wearing a mask while playing with his dog and wife on the beach alone, wears a mask. These people are laughable. They're laughable, but it's not laughable what they're doing. I've said this all along. I've been right the whole time. I said that the worldwide lockdown was the greatest international mistake in history. I've been vindicated. The staggering number of young people who have been hurt terribly, the greatest number of American young people who have died of drug overdose, the amount of suicide, all thanks to you who supported lockdowns. The stupidest idea in history for a large number of people. There have been stupid ideas for small numbers of people. Welcome to the show. I'm thrilled about the numbers of Omicron. It is basically, for the vast majority of people who get it, a cold. Some people don't even know they have it, but they test it. Largest number, what was it, 1 million a day or something that we've reached? The hope is that every healthy person, I mean, if I don't want it to hurt people with comorbidities, but that every healthy person will get it and will be done with this. But we won't. There will be new lockdowns for new reasons. In life, this is the way it works. Once you set a precedent, it continues. That's true for good things and it's true for bad things. The first time a person commits murder, it's very difficult. The fifth time, or even the second, it's much easier. Or take a more commonplace thing. The first time you stray on your spouse, and I'm not sitting here even and judging you. I'm just stating a fact. The first time you stray on your spouse, it's very difficult. And then it becomes easier and easier. The grotesque sin of lockdowns, of depriving children of nearly 2 years of education. Not that they get an education at school, but at least 2 years of socializing with other kids. This makes it easier to do it for something else. Let me give you an example. And I predicted this, so let's see. Yes, here we go. All right, I'll read this to you because this will sort of prove my point. I trust. About a professor who is arguing for an authoritarian response to global warming. That's what will be on the agenda next, my friends. There's no doubt about it. About how we are supposed to do this now that we have done this. Paper published in prestigious journal laments democracy and calls for authoritarian environmentalism modeled after COVID lockdowns to fight climate emergency. Did I tell you? Yep. Ross Matiga, professor of Department of Politics at University of Virginia. Is authoritarian power ever legitimate? While under normal conditions, maintaining democracy and rights is typically compatible with guaranteeing safety, in emergency situations, conflicts between these two aspects of legitimacy can and often do arise. A salient example of this is the COVID-19 pandemic, during which severe limitations on free movement and association have become legitimate techniques of government. Climate change poses an even greater threat to public safety. Consequently, I argue, legitimacy may require a similarly authoritarian approach. That's right. You know what I wrote about a year and a half ago? I wrote a column titled Dress Rehearsal for a Police State. That is exactly what you who supported lockdowns supported. A dress rehearsal for a police state. Nice people. Remember my theory. Nice people do a lot of damage. That doesn't mean you shouldn't be nice. Obviously, not nice people do a lot of damage. But nice people do a lot of damage as well. They think they're nice, and that's all they need to know, and they are nice, meaning they treat people in their lives very decently, and that's an extremely important thing to do. but then they ruin society with the support of bad people and bad policies. So that's your next one. If the state of emergency could be called, if OSHA could say fire, deprive people of a living, get rid of doctors and nurses who won't be vaccinated, then why won't they, with the, as this professor writes, the greater threat of global warming, much greater threat. Nobody ever said COVID was an existential threat to humanity, but they do say that this is an existential threat to humanity. Right? So what will they do? I don't know. I can't predict. I can predict only that they will use this as a state of emergency to deprive people of rights. The most obvious is free speech. You won't be able to bring any number of scientists, even 1,000, who will say that global warming does not threaten the planet. It's a problem. It's happening, but it's not an existential threat. Get you thrown off Twitter. You're a climate denier. That's right? Anti-vaxxer. If you ever said, hey, wait a minute. Let's take the vaccine as an example. Okay? Do you know another vaccine where they changed it from it prevents you from getting the disease or illness to, oh, you'll get it with the vaccine, it just won't be severe? Did they say that about the polio vaccine? You will get mild polio? Did they say that about measles or chickenpox? Oh, you will get mild measles, mild chickenpox. It is a lie to call this a vaccine. It's a lie. 100% lie. You can call it a mildness-inducing vaccination, or not a vaccination, a mild-inducing injection. Call it whatever you like, but it's not a vaccine. Vaccines prevent you from getting the illness. So they changed the definition, just like they changed global warming to climate change, just like they changed sex to gender. They manipulate language on the left. People go along with it because the entire media, with some few exceptions, is left. And you are left with the world of the lie. It's not a vaccine. That's the latest. No, it's true. We never said, this is called gaslighting. We never said it protects you against getting COVID. Said it makes it milder, the symptoms. Oh. Well, since it's so mild in any case, in the vast majority of young people, why'd you force them to take it? So this is the beginning. If you get away with evil, you will commit it again. That's the broken windows theory of the late wonderful James Q. Wilson, professor at Harvard and UCLA, whom I knew. I had dinner with him and his wonderful wife a number of times. He was right. You let broken windows fester, you'll end up with rape and murder. You let lockdowns for COVID, you will get lockdowns for something else.
Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
When there is a clash on the left between separate preferred activist groups, who gets preference? Who wins? Now, on the left, they have a hierarchy. Not any different than a hierarchy that you'd have in any sort of organization. You see, when the left has a moment of disagreement or conflict, it is very important to realize that there is a structure of what matters more than something else. I wrote a piece for humanevents.com where I wrote, it was literally called, "This Matters More Than That." Now, a great example of this is when Fauci, the lockdown artist, the anti-freedom activist, mad scientist, who is the best example of the technological and scientific elite that the left worships. When he was even confronted by a talk show host, where they asked Fauci, they said, "So do you think that young people should stop hooking up via Tinder and basically having very promiscuous relationships?" And Fauci said, "Well, you have to understand there's some risk to that." He didn't denounce it because he understood that if he came out against promiscuous behavior for young people, there'd be a revolution.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
I think this family can pick you up every time you fall.
Every time I take one step forward.
When Wright came in this morning, he wants to fight you.
No one expected this out of him.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
The only time you can come to Christ when the
You ever thought of going to seminary?
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dennis Prager. So remember this very important rule of life. What a strange thing here. Oh, well. Kinks of problems when you get back after a few days, I guess. Just remember that this is the way life works. And the rule is the first time is a challenge, the first time you do something awful or good, and it becomes easier. Closing schools for no reason has only made it easier to close school for any reason. Closing down people's businesses, ruining the economy because you call it a state of emergency for no good medical, scientific, or other reason. This is done, by the way, all over the place. My column this week is that America is freer than others. Later, I will read to you from the column what is happening in Canada, Austria, Holland, let's see, where else did I put? Germany, France, New Zealand, Australia. We're actually the freest major industrialized democracy on earth. Yeah. And Florida is freer, not just Florida, Nebraska, whole host of places. My good friend in Nebraska, who works out, as I do, work out at a gym. My gym's been closed. I now work out at home. My gym has been closed. I have not been able to attend it except for a couple of months for now nearly 2 years. He hasn't missed his gym once, not a day, in Omaha, Nebraska. Why isn't he dead? Why wasn't he sick? Because he lives in a state governed by people who are rational, Republicans. You get the lie at college that conservatives are irrational and progressives are rational, but it's a lie. It's completely the opposite. Florida's a free state. Tennessee's a free state. Mississippi's a free state. Alabama. I mean, whoever is governed almost always, except Massachusetts, which is a state of mostly foolish people, and people are freer in those places. We are freer in America. Canada, you can't get together indoors. You could not have Christmas with more than 3 other people, because your neighbors will snitch on you because they were told to snitch on you. As I wrote in my column, Canada should replace the maple leaf on its flag with a sheep. Yes. Oh, Canada, glorious and free? You got to be joking. That should be changed. It's not glorious or free anymore. That maybe the founders wanted it that, or the people who wrote the Canadian national anthem. Anyway, they'll probably change that to the Indigenous Peoples Anthem. Feel sorry for this generation of kids deprived of their childhood. And whether they go to school or not go to school, they're deprived. They go to school, they'll be told that they'll choose whether they'll be a boy or a girl. How's that? How's that for screwing around with the kid's psyche? Sorry to open up the ear with this. However, the good news is, here, unlike other countries, we have a good chance of prevailing. That's right. We meaning the people who want a decent and free country. And they're scared out of their minds. The Democrats are really scared they're going to lose both houses this year. Ted Cruz has come out for impeaching Joe Biden. Since you decided to use impeachment as an act of politics, there was no reason to impeach Donald Trump. He did nothing impeachable. Nothing. Nothing comparable to what Joe Biden has done to hurt this country at the borders. Nothing comparable. Tell me something that Donald Trump did that was as damaging to the United States as what Joe Biden did by making open borders. Tell me one thing that he did that is comparable. So Ted Cruz has said, let's impeach him if we get a majority in the houses, or at least a majority in the House. My instinct is, don't do the dirty things the left does. My instinct is wrong. Simple as that. You decided to make impeachment an act that the majority party in the House can engage in for no good reason. So we will do the same. And then let's all stop it. Although there is better reason to impeach Joe Biden than there was to impeach Donald Trump. Got a stack here over the weekend. My favorite, maybe, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez found maskless in Miami. I think it was Miami, but it was Florida. Her reaction was characterized by Candace Owens correctly as that of a high school child. You know, when she said that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is 32 years old, I was stunned. I think of her as 20. Immaturity is a characteristic of the left, even if you're 50. Because people don't want to grow up. Why get married? I have to be a grown-up if I get married. Why have children? And I doubly have to be a grown-up. People don't want to be grown-ups. The further left you get, the greater the antipathy to adulthood. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is a child. So when they said, wait a minute, you're adamant on masks. Why did you go to an anti-mask state and not wear a mask? And you know what she said? Oh, you're sexually frustrated. You just want to have sex with me. I can't make that stuff up.
Streaming on Salem Now.
The Democratic Party somehow has convinced black people that they're the good guys. Never mind the skanky history of the Democratic Party. That was a party of slavery.
He said, listen, I gotta give these niggas enough. Not too much, but enough that I'll have them voting Democrat for the next 200 years.
The race grievance industry would have you believe that blacks get up and think about nothing else except race.
If I tell you this is racist, yeah, I'm gonna get you emotional.
There is a whole big cottage industry for racism. If racism went away, a lot of people would be unemployed.
The mob during the Minneapolis riots following the death of George Floyd. A bunch of white thugs, frankly, burning down the city's traditional black and Asian business district.
They're racist, 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 racist. Everything's racist.
It's the devil!
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
Fiance? No, I can't be a fiance.
You're gonna go. You're gonna be my fiance, and you're gonna be the most amazing, fascinating, most successful man ever. We're only gonna be there for a few hours, eat dinner, and I promise we'll have the best breakup of all time.
My baby, my princess. Oh, yeah. Beat a little bit.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
When I started teaching, I was only 25. I was only 7 years older than my students. That's not a great span of time for between a man and a young woman, and it is a daily distraction.
That's right. It is. I thank you for your honesty. That is exactly right. And it is not his fault. He's built that way. It's no more his fault than food is a distraction to the hungry. Okay? There is no difference between the two. So I'll tell you an interesting story, really interesting. Many years ago, and I can't find this on the internet. Maybe one of you can, and that would be of great help to me. I only remember that he was from a university in Indiana, but I don't remember which university. What did it say, Sean? So a professor did a study and found that one of the two groups, I don't remember the second, of men most likely to divorce were high school teachers. And I think college teachers. In other words, men around a great number of young women divorced at a greater rate than any other men. And I had that professor on with that study. So if you could find that, I could read it to you.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
All right, everybody. Dennis Prager here. Yes, indeed. Fred in Philly tells me that Canada's death rate is a quarter of ours. That's right. It's true. If you keep everybody locked down for forever, you will also have a smaller death rate. So mature people try to figure out what you can do. The reason for the death rate, I am convinced, is because the medical profession banned people from getting medicine when they got sick. That's right, banned it. The American medical establishment killed about 100,000 people. According to Harvey Risch, epidemiologist at Yale, hundreds of thousands of people. Hundreds of thousands. Most of the people who died because doctors would not give them a therapeutic when they got sick. So either get better on your own or drop dead at a hospital. That has been the general attitude of the American medical establishment. People don't want to believe that the beloved profession of medicine has been corrupted morally. I don't want to believe it. I didn't want to believe it. I was a big doctor's fan. I was a big medicine establishment, medical establishment. I was a big pharmaceutical fan. Used to be the left that would criticize big pharma, and I would say, "Are you kidding?" Whatever you could say about them, you know how many lives the pharmaceutical companies of America have saved? That was my argument. And it's true. The medicines that American pharmaceutical companies have come up with, have saved hundreds of millions, maybe billions of lives. It's a fact. And they're corrupt. That's also a fact. You can walk and chew gum at the same time with these things. The lockdown states, instead of comparing America to Canada, let's compare the death rates of the states that didn't lock down to the death rates of the states that did lock down. I'll do that later in the show because I don't want to go to that website right now. I did it last week because there was a professor at, San Diego State? I think it was. Who wrote a piece for Newsweek and simply lied and said that the people who in lockdown states died per million, or the death rate was lower than the people in non-lockdown states. Just turns out, I read you the states and it's a lie. Most lockdown states like New Jersey and New York had the greatest death rate. Florida had none, and it was 13th in the country. And it has the largest number of old citizens, or the largest per capita and number. Maine has the largest per capita. It's a strange thing. I never knew that so many of Maine citizens were senior citizens, but I have to give you the accurate data. That's why Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez went to Florida to have freedom. So let me read to you her response. Got a lot of pages to go through here. So here's my story. When you start with the top, it'll be on the bottom, what you're looking for. If you start on the bottom, it will be on top. It's a rule of life. It's like what happens with regard to, let's see. All right, you want to find the AOC's actual response. It was basically they're sexually frustrated, the Republicans, and they would like to be with me. It's an amazing thing. First, the arrogance of the woman. And secondly, it's a non sequitur. If you're for a mask mandate, you got it there? If Republicans are mad they can't date me, they can just say that instead of projecting their sexual frustrations onto my boyfriend's feet, you creepy weirdos. Because somebody tweeted about the boy, probably a boy. He looks like a man, but he's a boy probably. I can't imagine that men date her. But whether man or boy, somebody commented on his white feet in his sandals, which is a stupid comment. I fully acknowledge that. But that's why they're attacking her, because they want to date her. God, she must walk around thinking. Very few women think that way about themselves, by the way. ReliefFactor.com, 800-500-8384. One of the greatest products I've ever advertised, and yet here we are starting a new year with Relief Factor. If you have joint or muscle pain, it is quite likely it will alleviate it, if not eliminate it. But if it doesn't work in 3 weeks, it probably won't work. That's what the makers of the product say. So you try it for 3 weeks for just $20, $19.95 precisely. And if it doesn't work, you cancel your order. ReliefFactor.com, 800-500-8384.
Streaming on Salem Now.
Fiance? No, I can't be your fiance.
You're gonna go. You're gonna be my fiance, and you're gonna be the most amazing, fascinating, most successful man ever. We're only gonna be there for a few hours, eat dinner, and I promise we'll have the best breakup of all time.
My baby, my princess. Oh, yeah.
Beat a little bit.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
When I started teaching, I was only 25. I was only 7 years older than my students. That's not a great span of time for between a man and a young woman, and it is a daily distraction.
That's right. It is. I thank you for your honesty. That is exactly right. And it is not his fault. He's built that way. It's no more his fault than food is a distraction to the hungry. Okay? There is no difference between the two. So I'll tell you an interesting story, really interesting. Many years ago, and I can't find this on the internet. Maybe one of you can, and that would be of great help to me. I only remember that he was from a university in Indiana, but I don't remember which university. What did it say, Sean? So a professor did a study and found that one of the two groups, I don't remember the second, of men most likely to divorce were high school teachers. And I think college teachers. In other words, men around a great number of young women divorced at a greater rate than any other men. And I had that professor on with that study. So if you could find that, I could read it to you.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
Hello, everybody. I'm Dennis Prager. And we go to Minneapolis and Emerson. Hello, Emerson. Hello, Emerson. Emerson going once. Emerson going twice. Emerson gone. Emerson was to challenge me, so I was going to put him on first. Says that my definition of vaccine is wrong. God, the people live in make-believe world. So I looked up the definition of vaccine. Ready, everybody? First thing you get when you look it up. A substance used to stimulate the production of antibodies and provide immunity against one or several diseases. Okay? Not to minimize the hurt in a disease. That is the definition. They changed it now, of course, because the left is in control of definitions. So here is from the Miami Herald. Why did the CDC change its definition of vaccine? Did you know that? Yeah. CDC is utterly corrupt, utterly. There's no question that so it will be recorded historically. Social media is calling bluff on the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. I can't believe this is in the Miami Herald, to be honest. For modifying its definition of the words vaccine and vaccination on its website. Before the change, the definition of vaccination read, quote, the act of introducing a vaccine into the body to produce immunity to a specific disease. Now the word immunity has been switched to protection. Get the switch? The term vaccine also got a makeover. The CDC's definition changed from, quote, a product that stimulates a person's immune system to produce immunity to a specific disease, which is what I read to you from the internet, to the current, a preparation that is used to stimulate the body's immune response against diseases. Stimulate the body, so it doesn't confer immunity. They've changed it. As I said, when you get vaccinated against smallpox, is it to minimize the effects of smallpox? You get a little smallpox, a little measles, a little chickenpox, a little polio. Was that told to us? Or were we protected from it? Were we, immune to it? As I said at the beginning, Omicron may be a godsend. Maybe, I don't know. I never make or rarely make predictions, but it may be a godsend because it's for the vast majority of people that is not serious, and yet it will confer on them natural immunity. And yet, the lockdowns around the world are continuing, are getting worse. Germany is considering doing what Austria does. Austria will fine you if you leave your house, if you're not vaccinated. You can only leave for emergency reasons or food. not in a restaurant, food in a grocery, over COVID. So AOC, as I said, vacations in Florida, I don't blame her. Why wouldn't you go to a free state if you could? God bless Ron DeSantis. It takes courage to do good in this world. That's something I always knew. It's very hard to do good on this planet without courage. Courage means that whatever the consequences to me, I will still go forth for truth, for goodness, for all the good things that people should stand for. But courage is, as I've always said to you, the rarest of the good human traits. There are a lot more nice people than there are courageous people. Here's a good question. If you set your daughter up, hey, you know what? I heard of the O'Connors told me that they got a great nephew. He makes a good living and he's a nice guy. Wouldn't it be something if people started saying, and he's courageous? And he's courageous. Nobody says that. It doesn't even dawn on them. Nice and generous and responsible and good earner, but nobody would list courageous. Talking about Florida, there's a phenomenal chart put out by American Enterprise Institute. The top 10 inbound versus top 10 outbound U.S. states in 21. It appears that overwhelmingly people moved from blue states to red states. Now, why would that be? Why would people leave blue states? For the same reason that AOC decided to vacation in Florida. A lot of people, not all, and certainly not all on the left, although the left is inconsistent. For themselves, they want freedom. For others, they want tyranny. But people do flock to those states. There's a phenomenal chart. New U.S. state population and state migration flow data for 2021 were released last week by the Census Bureau. What significant differences are there between America's top 10 inbound and top 10 outbound states when they are compared on the basis of political party control of state government, business climate, individual and corporate tax burden, state fiscal health, electricity cost, labor market, and it is a phenomenon. On all of these issues, people move to Republican states. I have friends in Europe, young people I met in Hungary, whose greatest yearning is to come to the United States, the freest country at this moment, still, like Lincoln said, the last best hope on earth.
Streaming on Salem Now.
We'll see one young lady identify as transgender, and the next thing you know, 6 or 7 young ladies in that same school are now identifying as transgender.
Children taught at age 5 they can create their gender identity, and it's being celebrated.
Schools are lining up to push the transgender agenda on kids and cut parents out of the equation.
Every cell of their body that has a nucleus is male or female.
We've now seen parents losing custody of their children if they don't go along with this.
We've all been created XY or XX, so that means there's only two genders. And so really the battle is against the Creator.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
You called your son, and you personally promised him you would be here.
Lucas, I don't know how to help you.
Your daddy loves you, you gotta know it, pal.
Prayer is a powerful thing, Ethan. It really does work, if you believe.
What reason does he have to care about some guy who's supposed to be his dad, but he's never around? I can't do it. I can't. I'm not ready for this, man.
I'm done with you.
We all deserve a second chance. Right, Ethan?
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
This is a story of how 1 million children were placed with local foster families through an unlikely alliance between the Chinese government and a British footballer. Parents from all walks of life share their stories of overcoming the one-child policy by taking in orphans. With unprecedented access across the country, this is a unique insight into the lives of the 90s orphans now driving the 21st century's fastest growing economy. This story needs to be told across the world. At a time where there's so much negativity and cynicism, here's proof that a single leap of faith can change the world.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Here is the top 10 inbound states. I won't give. Well, I'll give it to you. That means the states in 2021 that received the most newcomers. Number 1 is Florida. Number 2, Texas. Number 3, Arizona. Number 4, North Carolina. Number 5, South Carolina. Number 6, Tennessee. Number 7, Georgia. Number 8, Idaho. Number 9, Utah. Number 10, Nevada. The states that people most left. Number 1, California. Number 2, New York. Number 3, Illinois. Number 4, New Jersey. Number 5, Louisiana. Number 6, Maryland. Number 7, Hawaii. Number 8, Minnesota. Number 9, well, I don't know, I counted wrong because I'm only up with the 9. Let me see. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. 1 California, 2 New York, 3 Illinois. Oh, I missed Massachusetts. That's smart to leave Massachusetts. Massachusetts, New Jersey, Louisiana, Maryland, Hawaii, Minnesota, Michigan. Notice anything there? People who want a better quality of life go to places that are governed by conservatives. This is the most vibrant conservative movement on earth in the United States of America. Talk radio, which you're listening to right now, is one of the reasons. There is no such thing outside of the United States. There are talk show hosts around the world, but it's basically government sanctioned, like NBC and CNN and the New York Times. They're government spokesmen when the government is on the left. But to have a vibrant conservatism, there is no such thing as conservative talk radio anywhere in the world except the United States. There is no such thing as the incredible number of terrific websites. I'm always afraid to mention them because I know I'll just miss some of the great ones. But there's no Breitbart in Europe. There's no Daily Wire in Europe. Forget about Asia or Africa or South America. There's no The Blaze, the pajama media. I mean, it's endless. There's no Salem network. None of these things. No Fox News. That's why they'd like to shut us down. There is no anti-leftism on earth like in the United States.
Streaming on Salem Now.
We understand that a plane has crashed into...
The people who knocked these buildings down will hear all of us soon.
Biggest and most costly manhunt in U.S. history.
United States killed Osama bin Laden.
There are reports surfacing that Al-Qaeda has placed a $50,000 US bounty on the heads of any U.S. Navy SEALs.
Nobody's going to survive that. There's nobody in that.
This is the single largest loss of life in Afghanistan in a single incident.
Most of them are U.S. Navy SEALs.
We discovered bullets in the bodies of the Navy SEAls. The military threw them away.
More likely than not, that supports a shootout on board.
Anybody out there, we have a fallen angel.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
There's about 57 Muslim states in the world. There's one Jewish state.
The massive ingathering of Jews in the last 150 years back to the land is absolutely unprecedented.
They say that there's no greater sign of redemption coming than the Jewish people returning to the hills of Judea.
As a Christian, I've always supported Israel's claim to the Holy Land. To me, the Palestinians were just getting in the way of God's plan.
300,000 Palestinians are unemployed.
In spite of all the years of conflict, there's hope here, if you know where to look for it.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
The public would be outraged if they knew the truth.
Why do you think our politicians are not on the sidewalk right now talking to you?
Don't have no respect.
The old wall randomly turns into a guardrail, followed by miles of open border.
Human trafficking gone.
That journey is extremely dangerous.
The 7-year-old girl died in the desert.
From the country of India.
A great pillar of the community was killed by a man who had been deported at least twice.
This little urn contains the ashes of my son. His dreams cut short forever.
We're so worried about other countries' problems, and we don't even focus on our own.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Judge Thomas, you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do. I was under constant attack. You're not really black because you're not doing what we expect black people to do. This is the wrong black guy. He has to be destroyed.
So you'd still like to serve on the Supreme Court?
I'd rather die than withdraw from the process.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Man, I miss my father, and I want him to be here with me, but he's not.
We all had something in common. A lot of us were miserable. We had no fathers in our lives.
This is how I began the life of crime. I desired to have a father who would tell me that what I did was wrong.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
Right? So this has changed in the culture. We now have entire stadiums screaming blank Joe Biden.
Right.
I actually think that in some measure this is a sign of health in the country.
I don't think you're wrong. In fact, my last column, I talk about in essence, what the American people are feeling in terms of how they're being treated by the current administration.
Now, excuse me, by the way, I'm not saying I approve of it.
Right.
It makes me uncomfortable.
Clearly.
But
No,
at the same time,
we're talking about what we're observing.
It seems like a strange sign of health that we feel free enough to say that.
Well, and I don't even know that we necessarily feel free. What I would say is that the American people feel like kind of a battered spouse at this point.
Okay, you wrote an article.
And that the administration is so abusive to how they're treating people that this reaction that you're seeing, and it started out in 2 college football stadiums. It's now been in dozens to hundreds.
It's the new wave.
NFL teams had it going on this week. Talladega or NASCAR or whatever they ran had people chanting it. There is something so inherently abusive about how people are being treated
by the government.
They are, and particularly in a society that wouldn't consider itself particularly Christocentric. And it is, I am actually thankful, to your point, to see a degree of, we're not going to let this abuse continue, even if it's nothing more than using our freedom of speech to say something that's very vulgar and attach it to him. We're not taking it anymore.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dennis Prager, and a Happy New Year to you. I'm aching to know how New Year's and especially Christmas went for you. Most families are divided between the scared and the less scared, or the unscared. The frightened are a very big problem in human history. Fear has induced more evil than anything else, more than, certainly in the 20th century. More than avarice, more than any of the bad aspects of human nature. Fear. Fear is a propellant for people to do bad and to go along with bad. I made the point the last hour, and it needs to be re-emphasized. My column today, I write a column every Tuesday. You can see 1,000 of my columns literally on the internet. I try to write in a way that if you read something I wrote 15 years ago, it will strike you as important as had I written it this week. So you might want to look at them. But anyway, this column is about what is happening in other countries. We are the freest country in the Western world, among modern industrialized democracies. It's still a beacon of liberty despite the left. The left would like us to be like Austria, Canada, New Zealand, and Australia. They would like that. That's their aim. But there is a vibrant anti-left in this country that does not exist anywhere else in the world. The left runs Canada, the left runs France, the left runs the EU. This country still has, half of this country still loves liberty. Half would like to control the other half. That's the division in this country. We conservatives have zero desire to control the left. To control anybody. Do what you want. Obviously within the bounds of not stabbing somebody. Do what you want. While we're not officially libertarian, we tend toward it. Leave us alone and we'll leave you alone. That's the way we think. That is not the way any leftist thinks, because the moment you think that way, you leave the left. Leave me alone and I'll leave you alone, and I will take care of the people in my family and in my community. That's the way Americans thought throughout their history. I take care of me, I take care of my family, I take care of my community. The left says the state will take care of me, the state will take care of my family, the state will take care of my community. You know that the state of Washington just passed a law that a 13-year-old can decide to get medical intervention for a sex change without the parent knowing. A 13-year-old. State of Washington, one of the most contemptible states in the country. A lot of nice people, but they have no power. Remember that every single cult as long as we have had cults, which is all through history, and every single totalitarian regime begins with abolishing parental power. You know, I have 10 videos up explaining the 10 Commandments. They have tens of millions of views. I beg you to watch them. I beg you to show them to your children. It is my way of introducing people to the importance, relevance, and power of the Bible, the single most important book ever written, and the answer to almost every moral dilemma is actually found there. It's not found at the New York Times, CNN, or Harvard. It's found in the Bible. And they believed that at Harvard, by the way, at one time. You had to know Hebrew to get a BA at Harvard until 1800. Then by the end of the 1800s, people got PhDs in Germany, and they didn't know my motto, the Germans are always wrong, which is pretty consistently the case. They've even abolished nuclear power in Germany. By the way, how about this? The EU has just announced that natural gas and nuclear power are answers to worldwide warming, to the climate crisis. You hear that? The EU. That is about as good a piece of news as I could give you. Well, the American left is going apoplectic. So is, by the way, the European left. I don't know what happened. There must have been some divine intervention in Brussels. But I can't explain it any other way. That they've acknowledged what I have begged people to acknowledge. Of course, I've had no effect. I'm not claiming that. I just want you to know that if you listen to this show, you get a lot of good stuff, a lot of accurate information. And I've asked the whole time, how could you be an environmentalist worried about climate change and not advocate nuclear power? You're a phony. And this back to Germany, but Merkel, Germany is against nuclear power as their middle class gets choked on electricity prices. So that's where we are. The United States is the beacon of hope. All the young people I met in Hungary when I spoke there You may know about the conference because Tucker Carlson spoke there. We were the two speakers from the U.S. at that conference. Rod Dreher was there. He's been in Hungary for a while. He's another major thinker, but whose prominence I wish to acknowledge. I've had him on the show. Anyway, they would love to move to America. One young woman who I had on the show who's living in Holland and who is an incredible fighter. She is living in a country of pure lockdown. If you're not vaccinated, you can't go anywhere. I mean anywhere. Same with Austria. In Canada, you can't go on an airplane. You can't go on a train. You can't go on a bus. In almost all of these countries, there are health passes. You think this will end with COVID? That people will have electronic permissions to do whatever the government says? Does anyone listening believe that? Of course not. The Pandora's box has been opened. That's why I looked it up in April of 2020, almost in 3 months, 2 years ago, that this is a dress rehearsal for a police state. And the environmentalists would like this to be a police state. Tell you what temperature to keep your house, whether or not you can take your car anywhere, etc. We are a vibrant, anti-left, pro-freedom country. And again, my column today at DennisPrager.com or townhall.com, Pajama Media, then comes out Daily Wire and many other places. American Greatness, which I'm honored to be at. Canada is one of the least free countries in the Western world. In some ways, it is the least free in every area of life, including freedom of speech. Canada severely restricts its citizens' rights. Canada is one of the only countries in the world that bans the unvaccinated from all public transportation. And no Canadian home can entertain more than 3 non-household visitors. By the way, that's true in Holland and elsewhere. A ban that prevented families and friends from getting together for Christmas. Canada, I write, is a moral embarrassment. But apparently most Canadians are perfectly content to live in a country moving toward dictatorship. They should replace the maple-leaf on the Canadian flag with a sheep. Europe. In the summer of 2021, most European countries introduced the so-called health pass, or European COVID-19 pass. Most. This digital pass in the form of a QR code is a prerequisite to access cafes, bars, restaurants, theaters, and even long-distance transport. Only the naive can now deny that the real goal of the EU, the European Union, has long been a digital identity system for all European citizens. Yes, led by Austria and Germany. That give you the shivers?
The Pilgrims. They were poor. They were outcasts. They were enemies of the state for their refusal to submit to the Church of England.
The Mayflower was a cargo ship, but the most precious cargo that was carried across the Atlantic were the ideas in the hearts of the Pilgrims that were drawn from the Bible.
Not only did they start self-rule, they started free trade, capitalism, land ownership, all in 10 years with 51 people.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
History-making tax and spend disaster. I mean, there's no other way to describe it. And this is why people were so angry at the Republicans in the Senate and the House who have supported Biden's scheme. Did you hear Trump was giving a speech Monday night? The Republican Congressional Committee had a dinner, and he blasted the 13 Republicans in the House. I think Nicole Maliotakis was in the room. She had to be squirming. Because I'm sure President Trump held back, as he does. I'm sure he was very genteel and, very discreet.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on the Larry Elder Show.
Well, first I would ask, what city is Ron living in? Because when you look at Los Angeles and San Francisco, these are the states which offer the most, healthy financial incentives for homeless to relocate to our cities. I'm in Los Angeles. It's very robust. So just, anyone who's making under $16,000 a year can get food stamps in California, any city. And that value is about $240 a month. And then, additionally, there's SSI, SSDI. And so we're finding that homeless can get anywhere from, $900 to $1,400 a month. Now in San Francisco, what they did was they had COVID supplemental income and employment. This was during the COVID pandemic. So if you were in San Francisco, you could get, in addition to all of that, anywhere between $600 and $2,400 a month. That ran out at the end of September. That was through COVID. But you really see that, the bare minimum for many of these homeless who go through, SSI, SSDI, the, disability insurance can be anywhere from $900 to $1,400 a month, and that can get a little bit more. But what you see here, too, is that, maybe Ron doesn't want to take that. Maybe he doesn't want to go the route of a disability. And, maybe he has reasons for not wanting to take government welfare. But it sounds like what Ron is really, incentivized to be here is because California offers the best and most comprehensive free health care to both the homeless and to illegal immigrants. And that's a real driver. Whether or not you're collecting, disability insurance, what a lot of people come here for is the lucrative health care.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Hi, everybody. A reminder to you about your mortgage rates. They may, in fact, be too high, and I am sure they're going to go up because of inflation. They're going to have to go up. So you can get a mortgage checkup with Andrew and Todd at Sierra Pacific Mortgage. These guys have been advertising from day one of the lockdown. I remember being amazed that they're working. I finally met them. I like them. I trust them. Otherwise, I wouldn't personally endorse them. So if you want to refinance or get a new house with a new finance of a loan, don't forget they will just give you a checkup. There's no obligation. Go to andrewandtodd.com at Sierra Pacific Mortgage, andrewandtodd.com. 888-888-1172, or as I am wont to say, 888-888-1172. I have something so important to share with you now that it's difficult to overstate its importance. The amount of lying that the media do, because as I have told you over and over, truth is not a left-wing value. It's not that they say lying is right. It's that truth doesn't matter to them. It's not the exact same thing. You end up lying. But if you asked a leftist, is it right to lie, he would say no. She would say no. And I'm again not talking about liberals. talking about leftists. But because they, what does it mean truth is not one's value? It means that when you say something, is there a voice in you saying, is this true? The voice in a leftist is not asking oneself, is this true? Is this effective? Does this promote the values I believe in? That's what they ask, not is it true. Here's an example from NBC. It's such a lie. They report, see what they did is they say, oh, we're not saying this, we're just reporting that others are saying this. Overall crime decreased in 2020 in the U.S., report finds. Okay? Now, as it happens, murder has gone up in every big city in this country. Overall crime rate? Yes. There might have been fewer, whatever the categories, maybe fewer cars were robbed, were stolen last year. That's correct. So the very headline is deceptive. Overall crime. So listen to this. This is how they write it. NBC News. As Republicans revive familiar warnings about out-of-control crime in pursuit of regaining power, this is the way they write it. Is that cool? The prominent moderate Democratic group Third Way. Is there any prominent Republican group, NBC News? The whole thing's an editorial. Third Way. Prominent? Did you ever hear of Third Way? I do this for a living. I never heard of Third Way. Has a different message for the party. Don't take the bait. It's a lie. Get it? This is gaslighting. Oh, folks, you're reading about all the murders in Chicago and LA and San Francisco and New York. You're reading about people thrown in front of trains now on an almost regular basis, the latest in San Diego. Just a stranger walking over to a stranger and throwing them down in front of a train. But it's a lie. It's a lie. The great Groucho Marx line, you're going to believe me or your lying eyes, when his wife sees him in bed with another woman. A new report by Third Way digs into the numbers and concludes, quote, contrary to the media narrative, overall crime decreased in 2020 compared to 2019. That's interesting. What about 2021? But anyway, we'll continue. The study shows that homicides went up last year. So what? But it found the category to be an outlier. Oh, so there are way more murders, folks. But it's an outlier. There's fewer pickpocketing. There's fewer thefts. Which I don't believe, by the way. I'm not sure about that. The paper explores crime rates in the 22 states and District of Columbia, was submitted and published full data. 9 of the jurisdictions have Republican governors and 13 have Democratic governors. So here's the way they lie again. They talk about states, not cities. The cities are governed by, all the big cities are governed by Democrats. It doesn't matter who the governor is, it matters who the mayor is. So they report, you see, it's evenly distributed. There's just as much crime in Republican states as in Democratic states. The report finds no difference, see, look at this, no difference in crime trends between Republican-led and Democrat-led states. This shows you the deception. The governor is not the issue, the mayor is the issue. Would they find that there's no difference in crime trends between Republican-led and Democrat-led cities? So they talk about states. You see how they lie? It's so interesting. There seems to be a hysteria that began about a year and a half ago to try and convince Americans that we're undergoing another crime wave, said Jim Kessler, Third Way's Executive Vice President for Policy and Lying. What we're seeing is really scant evidence of a crime wave. These people have no shame, neither NBC nor this group Third Way. Scant evidence of a crime wave. President Joe Biden has connected recent violent crime to what, folks? Why do you think there were so many more murders in every big city? Because of the COVID pandemic and permissive gun laws. But it's happening in cities with the least permissive gun laws. What does it have to do with COVID? There's a virus out there, I think I'll shoot somebody to death? This is the make-believe world the left lives in. He has rejected the far-left slogan, defund the police, which is widely dismissed by Democrats, but backed by a small group of House members. All of a sudden, the cry that went up in virtually every Democrat-run city, defund police. Oh, whoever said that? Just a few far leftists. That's the line now. What do you mean? This is, again, gaslighting. You think you heard defund the police during 2020? Oh, give me a break. That's just a few House members on the far left. That's the line that you get from the Democrats. It's an American problem, not a Democratic or Republican problem, and not just a big city problem, said crime analyst Jeff Asher. Okay. So now I'll give you some data when we return. 1-8-PRAGER-776 is the number to reach me, 877-243-776. This is the Dennis Prager Show.
The Democratic Party somehow has convinced black people that they're the good guys. Never mind the skanky history of the Democratic Party. That was a party of slavery.
They're racist, racist, racist. Everything's racist.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Don't you get tired of commercials screaming at you to buy gold now with inflated promises on future values? In an unregulated industry, you need honest, real experts to give you solid advice to protect your wealth and top picks on the best coins and bullion based on real-time data and historical trends. For example, as environmental policy becomes a hot topic, one precious metal that's been significantly undervalued for years is potentially set to surge. Nick Grovich, owner of AmFed Coin and Bullion, has long recommended this precious metal. Up to 600,000 ounces of this rare metal will be needed by 2030 to produce green hydrogen. Nick is doubling down on this pick, and you should too. Call Nick at AmFed Coin and Bullion to find out more. I've been friends with Nick for years, and he's my go-to guy when it comes to coins and bullion. I trust him. He is a good and very knowledgeable man. Call Nick at 800-221-7694, 800-221-7694, AmericanFederal.com, AmericanFederal.com. Not one mistake.
Trending now on the Charlie Kirk Show.
When there is a clash on the left between separate preferred activist groups, who gets preference? Who wins? Now, on the left, they have a hierarchy. Not any different than a hierarchy that you would have in any sort of organization. You see, when the left has a moment of disagreement or conflict, it is very important to realize that there is a structure of what matters more than something else. I wrote a piece for humanevents.com where I wrote, it was literally called, "This Matters More Than That." Now, a great example of this is when Fauci, the lockdown artist, the anti-freedom activist, mad scientist, who is the best example of the technological and scientific elite that the left worships. When he was even confronted by a talk show host, where they asked Fauci, they said, so do you think that young people should stop hooking up via Tinder and basically having very promiscuous relationships? And Fauci said, well, you have to understand there's some risk to that. He didn't denounce it because he understood that if he came out against promiscuous behavior for young people, there'd be a revolution.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
Yes. So I read to you the NBC article that it's Republican propaganda and hysteria about crime in America. So just one item, AP, January 1st, 2022. Chicago sees deadliest year in quarter of a century in 2021. What does NBC News have to say about that? Chicago, as it has in previous years, ended 2021 with more homicides than any other city in the United States. Police Superintendent David Brown said the department hopes to recruit more new officers this year. They hope to recruit more new officers. Any politician who spoke about defunding the police and is reelected, the people in that community, I'm sorry to say, deserve the consequences I don't wish upon any of them. God forbid that they be killed or anything like that. But if it happens, they have earned it. I don't want it to happen. But there are consequences to elections. The department hopes to recruit more new officers this year and said there will be more officers on the street, not just in patrol cars or behind desks, to interact with all Chicagoans. The scary thing is there are so many random murders in this country that I read about. And I don't seek it out. I don't type in random murders. I go through various publications and I just see the articles. They just come up. It's a terrible thing. I didn't print out the article about the San Diego, which virtually none of you know. I'll bet you most people in San Diego don't know. Be curious if my San Diego listeners would comment on that. Man thrown in front of an oncoming train and killed out of nowhere. Okay, everybody. Cassandra in Louisville, Kentucky, the famous Cassandra of Louisville. Hello.
Hi, Dennis. I was listening to your more enlightened thoughts about that article. Did you say it was on NBC?
Yes.
Their website?
Yes.
The things that popped into my mind as maybe even more obvious was that since they were using data from 2020 and comparing it to 2019, one of the biggest differences in those 2 years is, first of all, for half the year, the country was locked down. And then secondly, for probably 3/4 of the year, the police weren't responding to what were considered minor incidents.
That's right. That's a very good point.
So I don't know where they get their crime data, if it's from police reports, but it's probably, I mean, it has to be grossly misrepresented, and you need to take into account that everybody was hunkered down for half the year.
Yeah, you mentioned that, and you're right. And the police not responding to minor issues, in fact, not responding to many things, because the anti-police sentiment was so profound. God, we lived in a world of lies. The whole George Floyd thing was a lie. In what way? In that there was no racial element. That was the lie. Keith Ellison, black, left Attorney General of Minnesota, said on television, we didn't charge Derek Chauvin with racism because race had nothing to do with what happened. If you ever watch the whole video, how in fact kind they were to George Floyd, begging him to get into the police car, begging him, please go get into the car. We don't want to hurt you. We don't want to hurt you. And he was not asphyxiated with the knee on the side of the neck because it's a procedure the Minneapolis police force allowed. He was screaming, I can't breathe, before anything happened to him. Probably from fentanyl, which was found in his system. How many readers of the New York Times know what I just told you? That's the question. What was that, Sean? Hey, folks, another year to recommend to you something I take every day, twice a day, Nerve Renew, because I have tingling and numbness in the feet. Some have it in their hands. It's a big nuisance in life, so sometimes it can be quite painful, actually. My story very quickly is I got special inserts in my shoes about 10 years earlier. It worked when I wore the shoes. Then it came back the moment I took them off. I read about Nerve Renew on the internet, figured, what the hell, I'll try it. After 8 months, I threw away the inserts. I have never worn them since. If you have this tingling or numbness in an extremity, you can try it for 2 weeks for free, but you could also have a 1-year money-back guarantee. Try NerveRenew.com. Try NerveRenew.com.
Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
Americans still have enough fighting spirit. We're not Canada, we're not Sweden, we're not Germany.
I would say that even under lawful elections where it was close but you lost, the incoming administration would say, you know, we don't really have a mandate. Normally people would say, I've got to deal with this closely divided group. I can't do great, big, dramatic things. This group has come in and said, we are going to go as hard to the left, as hard to progressivism, as hard to socialism, as hard to communism as we can, as fast as we can. We are going to go as hard to the godless view of everything as fast as we can. We are going to empower our enemies and insult our friends. We are going to undo everything the previous administration did, not because it's necessarily good for the country, but simply for the fact that the previous administration did it. And where that really came back to bite us in the backside, and I think that where you really start to see the let's go Brandon phenomenon is following Afghanistan. Because when the previous administration had left an exit plan saying, if you follow these guidelines, make it conditions-based, we can get everybody out safely, we can get all of our allies out before we take the military out, we can get rid of our equipment, we can do all this stuff. And because Joe Biden said, I'm not doing any of it, and the only reason he said it was because the previous guy did it, and we got 13 Marines killed, and we lost a lot of Americans in the process that are still behind enemy lines even to this day, that's when America woke up and said, wait a minute, this isn't right. And you're starting to see, I think, a groundswell that is going to roll all the way through the 2022 election cycle.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com. Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
Southwest was devastated this week, straight up lying, talking about it was the weather. The reason why 2,000 flights were canceled over the weekend, Friday through Sunday, and then over 300 or nearly 400 more on Monday. But the truth of the matter is, a lot of these people just caught out sick. They just caught out sick. They've been threatened by their employer because their employer happens to be a federal contractor. And because of that, because the federal government has their hands in Southwest Airlines, they have to comply. Now, here's the news. Nothing has happened as of yet. So technically, Southwest Airlines does not have to comply right now.
The calls that NBC News and the entire left is telling you this is baloney. Don't believe this increase in crime. It's a Republican hysteria. The world of the lies, everything from the left, well, not everything. I mean, if they say the capital of Washington is Olympia, they're not telling you a lie. But in the realm of wherever they differ from the right, they're probably lying. This is really a big one. I mean, I read it to you from NBC News, from the prominent Third Way. Oh, don't believe this. This is nonsense. You think there's this great increase in crime? Baloney, there's a decrease. Oh, my God. John in New York. A very safe city. Hello.
Hi, Dennis. It's a pleasure to speak with you.
Thank you.
You couldn't be more spot on. I have a scanner, a police scanner. I pick up all 5 boroughs. At night, when I put it on, I'm amazed at the crime that's going on, the shootings that aren't reported.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'll check in the morning the local paper, and I'll basically maybe see a little article on it. It is absolutely out of control once it gets dark at night.
Well, that's right. Hey, folks, let me ask you a question. How many of you Democrats, ask your Democratic relatives and friends, would you walk alone in any big city in this country at night? Okay. It's so fascinating to me. I take groups to Israel every other year, and I'm planning it for 2023, by the way, so you should know in advance. And how many people have said to me all of my career, even before I took trips to Israel, took people to Israel, I've always gone on my own. Well, oh God, would I love to visit Israel, but I'm waiting till it's safe. It's not safe. And I remember saying 2 things. Until it's safe means never. That's a motto of mine. Until it's safe is a euphemism for the word never. And the other is, I just want you to know that you could walk alone in any big city in Israel, let alone little city, at night, far more safely than at any big city in the United States. And that's truer today than it was even then. This is truly a scandal for the country I love. What the Democrats have done to increase crime. The Democrats have increased death in this country through its anti-therapeutics on COVID and through its anti-police with crime. It is a vile party, and nice people vote for a vile party. That's it. That's the fact. Yes, New York. Let's see. Let's go to Chicago. A retired detective in Chicago, the famous Detective Tom. Hello.
Hello, Dennis. To say I enjoy your show would be an understatement. Thank you very much,
Oh,
sir.
very kind. Thank you.
When you were referring to the 2021 homicide totals in Chicago, the Scum Times, as it's called here, it's the Chicago Sun-Times, they reported it at a tick under 800, which for some reason was their magic number. There is a website that has a more accurate accounting, and I'll say the name. I don't know if you have to bleep it out, but it's called HeyJackass.com.
No, that doesn't have to be bleeped. Jackass is maybe don't. It doesn't have. Sean is very sensitive to that because he doesn't want to get fired.
I know Sean's sensitive, and I completely understand.
But there are only 7 words banned from radio. Jackass is not one of them. Go ahead.
Okay, they're listing it at 846 at the latest count. Mind you, there's a few dozen death investigations ongoing.
Right.
Where it has not been ruled a homicide. But even if it's a quarter of those, you add another 10 to it. It's very sad to see the city that I was brought up in and love.
Is this the worst in your lifetime?
Well, in mine,
yeah, yours.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. No, that's what I'm curious to know. Okay. Yep. So there's a guy 60, worst in his lifetime. At least as he recalls it. Sounds right to me. All right, let me clear some lines here because we got from Chicago, we got from New York. And just remember the NBC report about this third way. Oh, you believe there's all this crime? Baloney. What? It's a Republican talking point. I just want you to know that. That's really important that you know that one. Okay, let's see here. Yes. Michael in Baltimore, Maryland. Hello.
Hi, Dennis. First-time caller. I just have a comment for you on the increase in violent crime.
Go ahead.
Violent crime actually was coincident and did start increasing with the pandemic. I mean, it's actually kind of a conundrum as to why it's gone up, but it's gone up all over the country, and it was there in the last year of Trump's presidency, and it's continued to increase. So, you know, I think it's a little disingenuous to blame this on Biden.
I don't blame it on Biden. I blame it on the Democrats. I don't blame it. I blame it on the left. When you announce to the country that this is a systemically racist place, that it's basically a gangster country, when you have on NPR a woman for an hour defending looting, NPR had it. It's a book in defense of looting, and they had the author on for an hour. The left's message, we live in the same country, Michael, has nothing to do with COVID. The left's message is this is a scummy country. And those of you who act against its scumminess, especially BIPOC, people of black, indigenous, people of color, if you act out, that's okay.
Streaming on Salem Now.
There's about 57 Muslim states in the world. There's one Jewish state.
The massive ingathering of Jews in the last 150 years back to the land is absolutely unprecedented.
They say that there's no greater sign of redemption coming than the Jewish people returning to the hills of Judea.
As a Christian, I've always supported Israel's claim to the Holy Land. To me, the Palestinians were just getting in the way of God's plan.
300,000 Palestinians are unemployed.
In spite of all the years of conflict, there's hope here, if you know where to look for it.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
The public would be outraged if they knew the truth.
Why do you think our politicians are not on the sidewalk right now talking to you?
Don't have no respect.
The old wall randomly turns into a guardrail, followed by miles of open border. Human trafficking gone.
That journey is extremely dangerous.
The 7-year-old girl died in the desert.
From the country of India.
A great pillar of the community was killed by a man who had been deported at least twice.
This little urn contains the ashes of my son. His dreams cut short forever.
We're so worried about other countries' problems, and we don't even focus on our own.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Judge Thomas, you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do. I was under constant attack. You're not really black because you're not doing what we expect black people to do. This is the wrong black guy. He has to be destroyed.
So you'd still like to serve on the Supreme Court?
I'd rather die than withdraw from the process.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Man, I miss my father, and I want him to be here with me, but he's not.
We all had something in common. A lot of us were miserable. We had no fathers in our lives.
This is
It's getting better. Yes, well. Oh, that's a good point from John in L.A. Theft used to be a felony. Now it's a misdemeanor. So it's another way where you could say, I don't know, do they count misdemeanors in crime rates? I don't know. It's a very good point, John. Yep. Anyway, I have read to you. It's important that you remember this is the way people are fed lies. So it would seem to me that the average Democrat, in other words, people who rely on NBC, ABC, CBS, NPR, PBS, CNN, New York Times, Chicago Tribune, Miami Herald, LA Times, Washington Post for their news, may really not know how much murder is taking place in this country. By the way, not just gang murders, but random murders, the type that people fear most. That's a toughie. The murders that I read about, this is the way it works. There is an ethnicity issue or racial issue that is at work here. If I read about a school shooting, I assume it's a white male. If I read about murder in a family, I assume it's a white male. If I read about random murders, I assume it's a black male. Everybody has their sort of monopoly. You know, it's like in LA, most of the nail salons are run by Vietnamese. Many of the dry cleaners are run by Koreans. Different ethnicities sort of have their arena. And I wonder in the case of the random murders, how many of those were raised in a family with a father, with an intact father? Man called me up on this show. You heard it last segment. Oh, Dennis, it's COVID. Not the absence of fathers. Not the absence of a code of ethics in their life like the Ten Commandments. No, COVID. Before COVID, it was poverty. Yeah, poverty causes crime. That was one of the keystones in knowing in my own young life that I wasn't on the left. When I heard that they believed poverty causes crime, and I thought of my quite poor grandparents on my father's side, and I remember saying, would grandma or grandpa rob people? Let alone, would grandpa rape? The thought was so absurd that I knew immediately the absurdity of poverty causes crime.
Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
Good. Thank you for taking my call.
My pleasure.
I'm a green card holder, have been for 20 years.
Thank you. From where?
When I first, from South Africa.
Excellent. Thank you.
When I came into this country, I had to have blood tests to see that I didn't have syphilis, gonorrhea, HIV. I had to show all kinds of vaccinations. I had to show means to be able to support myself, et cetera, et cetera. So my point being is that the law is not being upheld as we understand it. And so I don't understand how they are circumnavigating the law again. I mean, obviously allowing these people into the country in the first place without proper vetting, etc., is one of the ways. But I mean, the laws are written for legal immigration. There are methods and ways of doing it. They say the system is broken, but it's not broken. It functions.
Greg, I am deeply in your debt. Stay where you are because I've got a couple of questions for you, but just an addendum to your magnificent remarks. The system is not broken. We totally have a system that is set up to work if the laws that are on the books will only be enforced. But that's a huge if, and they are being intentionally ignored. So 20 years you've been here, right? And as someone who's actually followed the law, share with me a couple of minutes of your experience on whether it was too easy, too hard, or just right.
I think it was just right.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Streaming on Salem Now.
The Democratic Party somehow has convinced black people that they're the good guys. Never mind the skanky history of the Democratic Party. That was a party of slavery.
He said, listen, I gotta give these niggas enough. Not too much, but enough that I have them voting Democrat for the next 200 years.
The race grievance industry would have you believe that blacks get up and think about nothing else except race.
If I tell you this is racist, yeah, I would get you emotional.
There is a whole big cottage industry for racism. If racism went away, a lot of people would be unemployed.
The mob during the Minneapolis riots following the death of George Floyd. A bunch of white thugs, frankly, burning down the city's traditional black and Asian business district.
They're racist, 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 racist. Everything's racist.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
Fiance? No, I can't be your fiance.
You're gonna go. You're gonna be my fiance, and you're gonna be the most amazing, fascinating, most successful man ever. We're only gonna be there for a few hours, eat dinner, and I promise we'll have the best breakup of all time.
My baby, my princess. Oh, yeah.
Beat a little bit.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
When I started teaching, I was only 25. I was only 7 years older than my students. That's not a great span of time for between a man and a young woman, and it is a daily distraction.
That's right. It is. I thank you for your honesty. That is exactly right. And it is not his fault. He's built that way. It's no more his fault than food is a distraction to the hungry. Okay? There is no difference between the two. So I'll tell you an interesting story, really interesting. Many years ago, and I can't find this on the internet, maybe one of you can, and that would be of great help to me. I only remember that he was from a university in Indiana, but I don't remember which university. What did it say, Sean? So a professor did a study and found that one of the two groups, I don't remember the second, of men most likely to divorce were high school teachers. And I think college teachers. In other words, men around a great number of young women divorced at a greater rate than any other men. And I had that professor on with that study. So if you could find that, I could read it to you.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
Americans still have enough fighting spirit. We're not Canada, we're not Sweden, we're not Germany. And
I would say that even under lawful elections where it was close but you lost, the incoming administration would say, you know, we don't really have a mandate. Normally people would say, I've got to deal with this closely divided group. I can't do great, big, dramatic things. This group has come in and said, we are going to go as hard to the left, as hard to progressivism, as hard to socialism, as hard to communism as we can, as fast as we can. We're going to go as hard to the godless view of everything as fast as we can. We are going to empower our enemies and insult our friends. We are going to undo everything the previous administration did, not because it's necessarily good for the country, but simply for the fact that the previous administration did it. And where that really came back to bite us in the backside, and I think that where you really start to see the let's go Brandon phenomenon is following Afghanistan. Because when the previous administration had left an exit plan saying, if you follow these guidelines, make it conditions-based, we can get everybody out safely, we can get all of our allies out before we take the military out, we can get rid of our equipment, we can do all this stuff. And because Joe Biden said, I'm not doing any of it, and the only reason he said it was because the previous guy did it, and we got 13 Marines killed, and we lost a lot of Americans in the process that are still behind enemy lines even to this day. That's when America woke up and said,
Hello, everybody. This is the Ultimate Issues Hour, the third hour every Tuesday. Some great issue of life. You might call it the Wisdom Hour, but the reason I don't is that I trust every hour is Wisdom Hour. I'm very serious about that. I was an outlier as a kid. By the way, outlier is going to be my subject. I was an outlier as a kid. I wanted to be wise at a very young age. One of my goals in life, at a very young age, I set my goals in high school. I was atypical kid, I acknowledge it, was to understand life. And those who listen to this show or read my books are hopefully the beneficiaries of that lifelong search to understand life as best as possible. So explaining life is my life's work. Ultimate Issues Hour is about some great issue. So here's the one today. And this is one that, had I thought about it 10 years ago, it would have been clear to me that this was true. However, the last 2 years have truly brought this topic to the fore. As I've said on many occasions, to a certain extent, to my chagrin, I have learned so much in the last 2 years that I wasn't clear about prior to these last 2 years, which bothers me only in that I really thought I had reached great clarity about life, and then I learned all these things, like the power of fear. I didn't realize the power of fear until the last 2 years. I thought love and hate were the most powerful emotions. And now I think fear is. That's just an example of something I've learned just in the last 2 years. So the subject today, and you can start calling as soon as you hear it, is I have come to appreciate the following. Almost all good that is done by the outlier, not the group. I mean, some good has obviously been done by groups, but overwhelmingly, it is the one who marches to the beat of his or her drummer that does the most good in society. I have a much greater desire to hear the outlier now than I ever did. I mean, I'll give you an example that I have not mentioned at all, not even once, of a major change in my life with regard to attitude toward the outlier, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Until the last 2 years, I gave very little thought, frankly, to him and his work with regard to the potential dangers of vaccines. I accepted the narrative. Basically, I accepted the narrative of the mainstream media. Well, he's just an anti-vaxxer. Nice guy, but an anti-vaxxer, not to be taken seriously. I take him seriously now. I don't know if I agree, because I don't know enough. I don't know enough. But I take him seriously. The fact that he has been willing to go against the grain, to stand up and say, wait a minute, there are reasons to wonder about vaccines being given in such large quantities to such young people, babies basically, little children. I now do not dismiss as a kook. I do not dismiss as conspiracy thinking or whatever else was used to dismiss the man. The lonely voice is a voice I take more seriously now than ever before. The outlier. Now, there are some outliers who are probably kooky. Not probably, there are. There are kooky outliers too. Not everybody who goes and marches to his own conscience, God, or drummer is correct. But I don't dismiss them, as I generally would in the past. The people who comprise the mainstream are the ones that I find dangerous. This is in America. This is new. The mainstream in evil countries were obviously evil, right? The mainstream in Germany, the mainstream in the Soviet Union, the mainstream in communist China. These are people that follow the authorities, that march in place, and I now realize that marching according to orders is the human predilection. When I don't wear a mask at airports, it's my way of saying this is a gigantic lie. It's a farce. Better than lie, it's a farce. You know the masks are a farce. I know they are. I won't join the charade. That's why I don't wear a mask at an airport. I wear it on the plane because I don't want to get kicked off the plane. If I'm stopped and fined, I'll pay the fine. If I'm stopped by anyone, say, why aren't you wearing a mask? I have an answer, because I follow the science. And by the way, I had COVID. I'm one of the safest people in this airport. The question is not why don't I wear a mask? The question is why do you wear a mask? You're going to take it off when you eat here at the airport, right? So whom are you fooling? You can't get sick or you can't convey sickness while you're eating? But the moment you leave your table, you can kill people or get killed? Do you actually believe that? So I'm somewhat of an outlier, and the herd and the sheep don't like me. Some hate me. Washington Post readers want me dead. You can read it. Has no effect on me except to reinforce my convictions, by the way, just as a matter of fact. That's the way I react to the hatred that is directed to my attention. There's a law in the Torah, the first 5 books. My commentary is now halfway done. I've done Genesis and Exodus, the Rational Bible, the best-selling Bible commentary right now in the country, and it means a lot to me because when Costco orders 25,000 copies of Deuteronomy, I apparently have hit a nerve with my commentary because it explains a lot. You want a guidepost to life? It's in those 5 books, and I explain that. By the way, just let me announce to you that Deuteronomy, it's the 5th book, but it's the 3rd of my volumes. It's coming out this year. You can pre-order it at Amazon. And also, Hugh Hewitt called to tell people, especially his fellow Christians, get Dennis Prager's Passover, the Rational Passover Haggadah. It'll also change your life. That's going out in March in time for Passover and Easter. This is important stuff. So I will take your calls. This is one of the biggest subjects. The outlier does much more good than the group. That's what I have come to realize. I was going to cite the Bible. Do not follow the majority to sin. Back in a moment.
The Democratic Party somehow has convinced black people that they're the good guys. Never mind the skanky history of the Democratic Party. That was a party of slavery.
They're racist, racist, racist. Everything's racist.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Don't you get tired of commercials screaming at you to buy gold now with inflated promises on future values? In an unregulated industry, you need honest, real experts to give you solid advice to protect your wealth and top picks on the best coins and bullion based on real-time data and historical trends. For example, as environmental policy becomes a hot topic, one precious metal that's been significantly undervalued for years is potentially set to surge. Nick Grovich, owner of AmFed Coin and Bullion, has long recommended this precious metal. Up to 600,000 ounces of this rare metal will be needed by 2030 to produce green hydrogen. Nick is doubling down on this pick, and you should too. Call Nick at AmFed Coin and Bullion to find out more. I've been friends with Nick for years, and he's my go-to guy when it comes to coins and bullion. I trust him. He is a good and very knowledgeable man. Call Nick at 800-221-7694, 800-221-7694, AmericanFederal.com, AmericanFederal.com. Not one mistake.
Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
When there is a clash on the left between separate preferred activist groups, who gets preference? Who wins? Now, on the left, they have a hierarchy. Not any different than a hierarchy that you'd have in any sort of organization. You see, when the left has a moment of disagreement or conflict, it is very important to realize that there is a structure of what matters more than something else. I wrote a piece for humanevents.com where I wrote, it was literally called, "This Matters More Than That." Now, a great example of this is when Fauci, the lockdown artist, the anti-freedom activist, mad scientist, who is the best example of the technological and scientific elite that the left worships, when he was even confronted by a talk show host where they asked Fauci, they said, "So do you think that young people should stop hooking up via Tinder and basically having very promiscuous relationships?" And Fauci said, "Well, you have to understand there's some risk to that." He didn't denounce it because he understood that if he came out against promiscuous behavior for young people, there'd be a revolution.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
I think this family can pick you up every time you fall.
Every time I take one step forward. When Wright came in this morning, he wants to fight you.
No one expected this out of him.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
The only time you can come to Christ.
You ever thought of going to seminary?
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Here, this is the Ultimate Issues Hour. Big subject today. I take the outlier more seriously than I ever did. Outliers, not every outlier does good. In the beginning, the Nazis were outliers, the communists were outliers. So I am well aware that the outlier can do terrible, terrible things. However, the outlier is the one who does the good things as well. I do fear groups. I've always had that fear. It's an internal instinct of mine that when I see a lot of people, I get a little nervous. I don't mean that I have, look, I talk to 10,000 people at a time, and it has no effect. I am perfectly fine. And to see people gathered to do good things, like I get chills out of 40,000 people cheering their team. I do. I think it's a very sweet thing to see when 40,000 people, 30,000 of whom are singing the national anthem. I think it's beautiful. I am fully aware of the goodness that is possible in groups, but I am more aware of the evil that is possible in groups. So that's the way I would put it to you. And I value the outlier today more than I have in the past. I gave Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as an example. Okay, 1-8 Prager 776, Jennifer in Malvern, Pennsylvania. Hi, Jennifer.
Hi, Mr. Prager. Thank you for taking my call. I've called you before, and I'm grateful for all you do. I wanted to say quickly, I was in church on Sunday, as usual. I would say about 75% of the congregation were in masks. Mm-hmm. They were walking into church in masks. The priest was wearing a mask. The choir was wearing masks. And I and my fiancé were not. And for the first time, really recently, I felt like very much in the minority. That we are on the outs. And I came away thinking only one thing really could be true. And I was thinking of you at the time when I was thinking this. Either I am wrong or they are wrong. But we can't both be right. We can't.
That's right. You're making me smile. That's exactly right. One of you is wrong.
Yeah. Right. And you know what? I guess I'm willing to be wrong because I feel that I'm on the side of truth with a big T. But it is a strange feeling to be walking in the world as the minority, as the outlier.
It is, and that's why people don't want to do it. That's why I do it in the airport. You can take it off when you're seated at a table eating, or seated at you can take it off in the waiting area, the congested waiting area, right? No one thinks a thing. Oh, he's drinking his coffee. Of course, she's drinking her coffee. She could take the mask off. The willingness of vast numbers of people to do the irrational has really shaken me in the last 2 years. I fear the following the irrational. I don't fear the non-rational always. When religion is done right, it is a vehicle for non-lethal, non-rational. Every religion has a non-rational element. And I, including my own, and I love it. So, as I've told you, religion offers good religion. There's crappy religion, too. Good religion, healthy religion, offers you an innocuous outlet for the need of the human for the non-rational. When you drop religion, you will have the non-rational expressed in life, and then you have hell to pay. The willingness of the vast majority of people in the world to follow the herd in stupidity has been a shattering thing for me, and I'm not easily shattered. It has scared the living daylights out of me. When I see people wearing masks for no good reason, when I know of a synagogue that put a mask on the ram's horn, the shofar, the sacred instrument blown on the holiest day of the year, imagine that. It's like putting a mask on a clarinet. Has anybody done that? These people are out of their minds, and they frighten me. Out of their minds people really scare me. They should scare you. The outlier does all the good. Outliers can do bad, but the outliers do all the good. Remember that. That's the subject of this Ultimate Issues Hour. Okay, let's see. Elliot in Staten Island, New York. Hi, Elliot.
Hi, Dennis. How are you? You know, with all this debate going on, you know, it makes you kind of think that you're crazy. That, you know, it says in Jewish theology and teachings, there are two people that can predict the future, crazy people and children. Well, crazy people, they say, oh, he's crazy, don't listen to him, and then it happens, I guess the crazy person is really telling you the truth. It's just like if I was in Nazi Germany in 1934 and 35, and I kept on saying, you know, there's a Hitler coming, he's going to put you into gas chambers and ovens, people will walk across the street. And the same thing I feel like now with this COVID, when I have debates, and I'm a modern Orthodox Jew, and in the synagogue, like you said, a lot of people were scared during COVID. They didn't want to even open, and I wasn't scared. So I went, and then everybody was getting vaccinated, and the people who got vaccinated didn't have to wear the mask. The people that were not vaccinated, and that was me up until the last minute, where I had to get vaccinated, I wore a mask. But meanwhile, we learned that people that are vaccinated can carry the virus just like the unvaccinated.
That's why they changed.
And the whole thing is just crazy.
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't even know where to begin, what to say to people anymore.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. That's exactly right. The religious, I'll talk about the religious when we come back.
Streaming on Salem Now.
Tesla was a genius. His most amazing discoveries thought to be written in a lost journal. Now, in the right hands, it could revolutionize the 21st century.
You can stop an earthquake. Doesn't that mean you could start one too?
That's why that notebook should never fall into the wrong hands.
Shall we stop this thing? Save the universe!
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Judge Thomas, you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. I do.
I was under constant attack. You're not really black because you're not doing what we expect black people to do. This is the wrong black guy. He has to be destroyed.
So you'd still like to serve on the Supreme Court?
I'd rather die than withdraw from the process.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
This is a story of how 1 million children were placed with local foster families. Parents from all walks of life share their stories of overcoming the one-child policy by taking in orphans. At a time where there's so much negativity and cynicism, here's proof that a single leap of faith can change the world.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
How buoyed are you that Americans are finally waking up, JD?
Look, I'm very excited about what I'm seeing. Certainly in Virginia, but also in Ohio. It feels like there's a real grassroots movement brewing on the conservative movement right now. And it's, just like in times past, it's not just the politicos, it's not just the establishment folks. Sometimes not even people who are that political, but they're just very fired up about what their kids are teaching. Their kids are coming home crying, upset because they're being told that they're a bad person depending on the color of their skin, and they're just fed up about it. And I think it may very well take down Terry McAuliffe, but I certainly think it is the beginning of a movement all across this country that's going to take down a lot of Democrats all over the nation.
In the break, we were talking to my team here, and somebody said, "Well, it's neck and neck, and if Glenn loses by 3 points, that's a big deal in any other normal election." And here's the reaction I have, JD. There is no such thing as a normal election after 2016. Do we have any faith that there will be a normal election? Talk to us about the recent breaking news about Facebook and the censorship of conservatives. You've written a piece about it. How do we get back to quote unquote normal, JD?
Oh man, we got a lot of work to do. Facebook did two things basically in the 2020 election, one of which we've known about for a while. They basically censored information that was negative about Hunter Biden and Joe Biden. They promoted information that was negative about Donald Trump. And I really believe that swung the election in a really important way.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
You called your son, and you personally promised him you would be here.
Lucas, I don't know how to help you!
Your daddy loves you, you gotta know it, pal!
Do you feel the love?
Prayer is a powerful thing, Ethan. It really does work, if you believe.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Okay, everyone, the Ultimate Issues Hour, third hour on Tuesdays. It's not a subject I've ever covered in the Ultimate Issues Hour. Outliers do all the good. And it's really become clear to me. The human desire to blend in and not stand out is very understandable and is a vehicle to terrible things. This was not my intent, but I think I need to just offer you a personal example. I don't wear a mask at an airport, neither should you, unless you believe in it. If you believe in it, there's nothing I can say. I never argue theology. So if you don't believe in it, don't wear it. I think I may have mentioned on 3 occasions in 3 different airports in the country, I've been approached. Police walked over to me. Usually they're in pairs, and I got a slight adrenaline rush. And in every one of the 3 cases, they came over to say how much they thanked me for my work. Love you, Dennis. It always cracks me up. They're masked, I'm not. They don't say a word. It's a gigantic charade I refuse to be part of. By the way, I had a throwaway line just now that is worth, I think it's worth my remembering, and your too. If you believe masks work, I don't argue with you because I never debate theology. That was a good line. There's no science behind mask wearing. Oh, by the way, talking about that, I'm not sure this is so. I heard it, and I have to verify it. Teachers in the LA Unified School District, the second largest school district in the country, will now be wearing N95 masks. Gives you an idea of the hypochondria and fanaticism and irrationality of LA's school teachers. But I must say, when they go out of their minds, not breathing, I mean, that you really don't breathe. I mean, that's just breathing in your own exhales for all those hours. If they're willing to undergo that punishment, they're that masochistic in the name of health, more power to them. Enjoy your N95 mask. Chris, Minneapolis, Minnesota, hello.
Mr. Prager, how are you?
Well, thank you.
Good. Long time listener. Since my early 20s, a little nervous. I just wanted to call and say that thank you for this. I consider this a bit of a therapeutic Davenport, if you will. I am definitely the outlier of my family. I have 2 younger sisters, a younger brother, and my parents, and I don't even recognize them anymore. We haven't gotten together for my family. I have 4 young children as well. But our family hasn't been invited to any holidays this last year. We haven't all been under the same roof since Easter of last year. When just at that time, my parents were vaccinated.
Why is that?
Anyway,
why have you not been invited?
Just general fear from the media of being too close to people. And that's wait. Forgive me. I need to have this clear. Yes.
Is anybody invited, or everybody celebrates with their own immediate family?
So the Christmas of 2020, nobody got together. This most recent Christmas, 2021, everybody got together outside of my family, who was not invited because we are not vaccinated.
Oh, okay. So that's what I needed to hear. Of course, and I assume that. Yeah.
And the great irony is,
wait.
All white.
And
I'm black.
Oh, that's awesome.
Isn't that just terrific?
I love it. You should have come to my house.
Well, would have loved to.
I'm sure you would have, and we would have loved you. That is really...
Thank you, sir.
This is the precious call, I have to say. Is your wife white? Your wife is white.
My wife is white, yeah.
Yeah, right.
And I'm of mixed race.
So wait a minute. What about your family? Are they also scared of you? Your parents?
No, these are my parents. I'm talking about my parents and they're my half.
What about the in-laws?
The in-laws is a whole other story. The funny thing is, they're less scared. They're on the left, but they live in Arizona. One's in Mexico and one's in Canada.
All right, I'm very curious. Send me an email. Oh God, what a great story, my friends. What can I say to those of you who are holdouts on Relief Factor? Why wouldn't you try it for $20 for 3 weeks? If it doesn't work in 3 weeks, it probably won't work. The makers of the product say that. So why wouldn't you try it? I promise you it works for me. It works for my wife and for everyone I know who takes it. It doesn't work for everybody. Nothing does. But try it for $19.95 for 3 weeks. At relieffactor.com, 800-500-8384.
Have you ever thought of going to seminary?
Billy Graham.
Gloria a Dios, hermano. ¿Quién está listo para ser transformado por el poder de su palabra?
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
I grew up poor, which is even worse than being poor.
Our lunch consisted of whatever my mother could scrape together from the dinner the night before. We would have sandwiches with no meat.
My American dream entailed working hard and making $20,000 a year. But I surpassed that goal and became a corporate CEO.
Put in an economic growth plan called 999.
We'll all be able to say, free at last, free at last.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Man, I miss my father, and I want him to be here with me, but he's not.
We all had something in common. A lot of us were miserable. We had no fathers in our lives.
This is how I began the life of crime. I desired to have a father who would tell me that what I did was wrong.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
The only time you can come to Christ when the Spirit of God comes.
Have you ever thought of going to seminary?
Billy Graham.
Gloria a Dios, hermanos. ¿Quién está listo para ser transformado por el poder de su palabra?
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
You're out of your mind if you think this family can pick you up every time you fall.
Every time I take one step forward, seems like I fall.
Boy, Dylan Wright came in this morning. He wants to fight you.
Never say die, gonna give it all.
This is your opportunity to get back on your feet.
This is my time. Won't quit, I've just begun.
You gotta know who it is you're fighting for. That's the fight, Bo.
I can't believe I'm saying it, that Bo Lawson can go 10 years without a competitive fight, and here he is going toe-to-toe with the world champion. No one expected this out of him.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
To, or you hear from someone or read from someone, and then you think, wow, that is really big, and you think, why didn't I think of that earlier? But had you been told earlier, you would have immediately thought it was true. So I feel this way, like I've known it, but I've skirted around the issue. Now it's direct. Nearly all good in this world is done by outliers. Not every outlier is good. There's two different issues. But all good is done by outliers, very little by the group. The last caller who at the end identified himself as black is a perfect example. Black conservatives are outliers. I mean, when you compare any of these left-wing black leaders, all of whom I believe are power-loving thugs, like white leftists, power-loving thugs. But I'm just talking about blacks now, versus the black conservative who has achieved so much good while being the object of so much hatred and derision and mockery and ignoring. The fact that Tom Sowell is not a household name among people who claim to be thinkers. One Tom Sowell column is worth more than every single thing that, what's his name at the New York Times? Me and names. This has been my whole life. It's my Achilles heel, but it doesn't matter. I mean, it's a fact of life how much truth is in a Tom Sowell column, let alone his books. Larry Elder, Candace Owens, and Carol Swain. The list is actually quite long. Jason Riley. These are people who do good. Not Al Sharpton. Al Sharpton's a joke, a bad joke, a joke who does bad. That more people know of Al Sharpton or Ta-Nehisi Coates or these Republican members of Congress than Tom Sowell and these others. Anyway, it's the outlier in all of these cases. It's a very interesting thing to realize. Very important thing. Okay, let's see here. Mark in Pittsburgh, hello.
Shalom, Dennis. I'm sort of what you referred to a couple weeks ago as a character. I tell people I'm not crazy, I'm eccentric. But I've always had a philosophy to think outside of the box in all aspects of my life, of my business, of my fly fishing and my musicianship. I mean, there's some things that are etched in stone, like if you're rewiring a house, you've got to follow certain rules. But sometimes there's a lot of things that there's different ways to look at things. And I think a lot of people don't look at it that way. I have a lot of friends. I've been blessed with that. I find some people either love me or maybe they hate me, but I've led a happy life. It may not have been rewarded with wealth, but I've had a lot of personal accomplishments, and had a happy life.
Well, you use the magic word eccentric. I have mentioned this, but I don't expect everybody to remember everything I say any more than I do, for that matter. I would say a long time ago, I know it's a long time ago, my brother was at Harvard Medical School. So I was visiting him at Harvard, and I went to their bookstore, the Harvard Coop as they call it. I don't know if it's still there, I assume it is. And I just browsed its books. Nothing more fun to me than browsing bookstores, but they don't exist by and large anymore. Tragedy. Anyway, one of the things that fascinated me is the outliers during the Holocaust who tried to rescue Jews, hide Jews. That's the ultimate outlier. Not to mention, if you get caught in Poland at any rate, you were murdered by the Nazis. In Germany, you were imprisoned. And one of the characteristics, the study of rescuers, people who hid Jews, was that they had been considered an eccentric prior to the war. That shook me up. That was my first inkling. The outlier is the one who does good. It takes courage to be an outlier. That's the point. Stan in Los Angeles, hello.
Hi, Dennis. How you doing?
Good, thank you.
So I take a little disagreement with you on how you look at all good coming from outliers, and I think it's more all bad also may come from outliers. That
I said that.
I think people who use reason as an outlier, like Alexander Graham Bell or Albert Einstein, they were outliers. They saw what was going on and used rationality. On the other hand, there are some people who do it politically, and I think that's what we have to be careful about when a political outlier gains power. Environmentalists 50 years ago were nowhere. Now they control basically what's going on. Using a science that is politically motivated.
Right, so where do you disagree with me?
Well, you said all good comes from outliers. I think all bad can come from outliers.
No. Right, you're right. Right. I said that, though. I'm not blaming you. I don't expect people to hear everything I say clearly, and it may be my fault. But I was specific. I said all good comes from outliers, but not all outliers do good. I said that in those words. That's correct. I even gave the example. The Nazis were outliers in the beginning. That's correct. But it's still a fact. The good comes from the outlier.
Streaming on Salem Now.
We understand that a plane has crashed into...
The people who knock these buildings down will hear all of us soon.
biggest and most costly manhunt in U.S. history.
United States killed Osama bin Laden.
There are reports surfacing that Al-Qaeda has placed a $50,000 US bounty on the heads of any U.S. Navy SEALs.
Nobody's going to survive that. There's nobody in that.
This is the single largest loss of life in Afghanistan in a single incident.
Most of them are U.S. Navy SEALs.
We discovered bullets in the bodies of the Navy SEALs. The military threw them away.
More likely than not, that supports a shootout on board.
Anybody out there, we have a fallen angel.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
There's about 57 Muslim states in the world. There's one Jewish state.
The massive ingathering of Jews in the last 150 years back to the land is absolutely unprecedented.
They say that there's no greater sign of redemption coming than the Jewish people returning to the hills of Judea.
As a Christian, I've always supported Israel's claim to the Holy Land. To me, the Palestinians were just getting in the way of God's plan.
300,000 Palestinians are unemployed.
In spite of all the years of conflict, there's hope here, if you know where to look for it.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
The public would be outraged if they knew the truth.
Why do you think our politicians are not on the sidewalk right now talking to you?
Don't have no respect.
The old wall randomly turns into a guardrail, followed by miles of open border.
Human trafficking.
That journey is extremely dangerous.
The 7-year-old girl died in the desert.
From the country of India.
A great pillar of the community was killed by a man who had been deported at least twice.
This little urn contains the ashes of my son. His dreams cut short forever.
We're so worried about other countries' problems, and we don't even focus on our own.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store.
Ultimate Issues Hour, the good comes from the outlier. I've never been more aware of it. I've never been as aware of it as in the past 2 years. Dallas, Texas, Julie, hello.
Hi, Dennis. Thank you for taking my call. I identify with you in that sometimes you talk about seeking justice or feeling like you seek justice from a young age. I feel the same. I'm somewhat intuitive and I think a little bit of an outlier. But in August of 2020, early on in the pandemic, I did contact COVID. I'm also an RN and I do medical research as a living. And the doctor that treated me, that diagnosed it, I knew immediately said to go home and go to the hospital if you get worse. I found an outlier, a physician that was one of the very first frontline doctors that I went to the following day, was treated, was still sick but recovered. I took the drugs that were available at the time, from antibiotics, steroids, hydroxychloroquine, etc. I feel like that man did a great justice to me and the community, but he was called a quack by the mainstream physicians. He's treated now thousands of people fearlessly in the Dallas area. His last name is Proctor, Dr. Proctor, and but he was an outlier, but a very brave man. I have personally now since then, because I'm very educated on natural immunity and speak very highly of it, have done studies on antibody studies, etc. I have faced difficulty from friends and family when the vaccine was introduced. So just to let you know, it's a challenging year and it's difficult.
Yes, look, okay, thank you. I bless you and your doctor. Folks, I got to leave you with this realization here. Will you stand up for what you believe? It's very difficult. I don't find it easy to walk through airports without a mask. But it's my way of saying I will not be a part of the irrational herd. That's it. That's my statement. You know you're fooling yourself because you don't give a damn if the guy next to you takes off his mask to drink his coffee. But then everybody will put it back on. At a given point, you will earn, not be given, earn self-respect, and you will be doing this country a great service. There are many ways to be a good outlier, but please know all the good that does happen happens from them. Oh, and the economist's name, who's not worth reading, was Paul Krugman. It's the Ultimate Issues Hour. I'm Dennis Prager.